Let me get the chat open too so I can see who's in. We are going to have a debate today. Thanks everybody for coming. My name is Powell. This is the Conscientious Omnivore. That's my channel. And today I've got two guests. One of them is Maddie, the news chick, and she's got a channel doing a lot of interesting stuff. So check her out. And then we've got Logan Blake, who's a fellow vegan here on YouTube. And I've guested on his channel before, and we're here to discuss veganism and debate some things around nutrition and deficiencies and things like that. And we'll see where the conversations and debates go. So yeah, maybe just a quick couple words about yourselves, Maddie and Logan, and then we'll let Maddie go first, and then we'll get into it.
All right. This is Maddie, the news chick on Twitter. And also Maddie the herb chick on YouTube, which is a small little fledgling baby channel that I have very little content on. Since 1992, I have been studying, putting into practice, making my own blends and stuff for natural health and studying nutrition. So I have been slowly trying to work my way to a point in my life where I can start actually selling my own blends and things like that, but that's still a future venture. I'm very open-minded when it comes to different lifestyle choices, different ways of, putting nutrients into your body within reason, because there are some people out there that cross the line into what I consider, pseudoscience, and I am not saying veganism is a pseudoscience. I'm making that point clear now, I hope. I know it is a diet and lifestyle choice. I know the difference between veganism and vegetarianism. There is a thin line because vegetarians will wear things made from animal products like leathers and things like that. Vegans will not. Or at least, staunch, like I like to say, traditionalist vegans will generally not wear anything or have to do with anything that was made from any sort of animal product, like leather or skins or stuff like that. So. Okay,
great. Thanks. Logan, a couple words from yourself.
What up, everybody? I got a YouTube channel called Thunder Bay Personal Trainer. I'm a personal trainer. I'm also in school to be a nutritionist right now. Former power lifter right now. I'm a marathon and ultra marathon runner. I actually have a marathon tomorrow morning. And that's basically what my channel is about. Here we go.
Okay, welcome. Cool. If anybody's on, I can see a couple people in. Is the audio level okay for everybody? Like everybody's audible? Can see everybody? Hopefully. If it's not and you're having trouble hearing anybody, let me know. I can hopefully adjust the volume if needed. So yeah, okay, so let's get started. Maddie, I think I actually would like to give you the floor in a little bit to kind of explain your position. What I know from your stance is what you've provided on the video for the Train and Make Girl channel. Mm-hmm. And I just want to kind of ask a couple questions that maybe you can explain just to give me a better feel for, where you're coming from and how I should approach kind of what I want to say. So my question to you is, in the video, you've kind of really stated that you don't think a vegan diet is possible to get your all of your nutrients without supplementation. And my question is, did I understand that correctly? Do you think it's not possible, or do you think it's difficult? So that's one question. And then the other thing is, if that is the case, then do you have a problem with the supplementation because it's not natural, or some other issues? So those are my questions.
Okay, the first question is, except for B12, which has been tested and proven that you cannot find a vegetable source for that vitamin. There is possible ways that I will concede. There are possible ways to get the rest of your nutrients from nature, from plants and seeds, legumes, nuts, and things of that nature. It would then depend on how much the person coming into veganism, the serving sizes, how many servings a day they would have to intake. If, because let's be a little realistic and open-minded. 3 ounces of salmon, 1 cup of sunflower seeds. one is a lot less than the other when you take a look at just, the visual serving sizes, looking at it from a logical standpoint when you're, looking for protein sources and things like that in plants. Also, too, soy is one of the big protein sources in veganism. And that is not a viable source of protein for women who are predisposed to having breast cancer. A lot of physicians, if not all of them, will say that they need to stay away from all soy sources in order to not increase the estrogen in their system to make themselves more prone to having breast cancer. I myself tend to eat more get more of my food from vegetables and fruits and nuts than meat. But I do like my fish. I like my chicken. I like my turkey. I like my red meat on occasion, maybe once or twice a month. I'm not, a voracious, beef eater. But what gets me is I like to go into, when I tell people, let me start from the beginning. When someone asks me what their lifestyle choices should be, I always respond that they need to do the research and they need to speak to their physicians, because there are some medical conditions which prohibit people from having going into a vegan diet or lifestyle, because they need the proteins and the heme iron from meat that they can't find in plant and vegetable sources. And most of these people suffer from severe connective tissue disorders.
Okay, so let me stop you there. I think I get where you're coming from. If I could just sum it up and paraphrase what you're saying, you're not stating that you can't get the other things aside from the B12 from a vegan diet. You're just saying it's more difficult, or that it's just that you have to be more careful and challenging, and potentially you have to eat larger portion sizes physically. So it's like inconvenient. Is that like a good summary of kind of what you said?
It would depend on, in this world where everything is 5 minutes ago and everybody's rushing around, would it be more convenient to have like the cup of sunflower seeds to chew on throughout the day? I would say yes. But when you're trying to stick with a meal plan, it's much better to have a small meal and keep going, because you can pre-prep those a little easier. Okay, so from a convenience standpoint, that would make, a little more sense. But from a nutrition standpoint, you do need that B12 for cognitive issues, for nervous system health. And as far as supplements are concerned, to answer your second question, there are herbal-based, natural-made supplements out there that are more readily available and more easily assimilated in the system. When most people think supplements, they think Centrum, mainstream, synthetically generated supplements. And most of those supplements are not completely assimilated into the system. As a matter of fact, 55 to 65% of most synthetically made vitamins pass through your system and come out your colon and don't get observed.
Okay, so let me go back to a couple of things you've said, because all the information and studies I've seen has actually shown that, for example, soy products like tofu and tempeh and things like that are actually protective for women against breast cancer and other cancers as well. The estrogens that they contain are not the same as the estrogens you get from, say, dairy milk. Dairy consumption has been linked with an increased chance of breast cancer as well as prostate cancer for men. With the estrogen found in soy products, they're called phytoestrogens. It's a different compound, so it's not exactly the same thing, and it does behave differently in your body. And there's lots of studies that actually show that you have a decreased chance with increased consumption of soy.
Okay, I have looked up that information on the Mayo Clinic, and I stand corrected on that.
Okay. Ours.
Okay.
So, and then I want to talk a little bit about the B12 thing, because I think we're on the same page there. I have no qualms about saying that vegans should supplement with B12. And what I want to kind of point out to you is that a large portion of the population is actually either deficient outright or like borderline deficient, but definitely has low B12 levels. And the thing is that the stats I've seen vary, but in the US, like the lowest stat I've seen shows that about 20% are at least borderline deficient. And I've seen stats that say as high as 30%. But let's just go with the lower one. And if you just think about that, that's like 1 out of every 5 people. But it's, the number of vegans out there, or even just vegetarians, is a lot lower than that. So I would just say that it's definitely not a vegan problem. It's actually very difficult to get enough B12 for people nowadays, regardless of what diet they're eating, unless they're careful and making sure and checking their levels. And the reason for that is that even the animals need to get supplemented with B12. The B12 is not a typical vitamin in the sense that like many of the other ones are. It's actually something that's produced by bacteria that live in the soil. And basically these bacteria produce this B12 that we do need. And I'm not here to say that we don't need it. I absolutely think we need it, and I supplement myself and my family as well. But the thing is that this B12 that's produced, the way that you would normally have ingested that would have been like in the natural sense. You would be eating stuff like probably that was contaminated basically with some soil. So if you're pulling stuff out of the ground, not washing it thoroughly, or drinking groundwater because it's a water soluble vitamin, that's also why you can't overdose on it. You can't get too much B12, you just pee it out. So it's water soluble, and what happens is if you were drinking groundwater previously, like in the old days, or pond water or stream water or whatever, basically anything where the soil could have infiltrated and run through, you would actually be getting some B12. And so in a sense, what I want to say is that I don't think it's an argument against nature to say that you need to supplement now, because the reason why we don't drink the pond water or the well water anymore untreated is that there's pathogens in there. You could get sick from other kinds of things that are going on. And that's why it's more safe and more like easy to just get B12 in either fortified foods like plant-based milks or cheeses or dairy like yogurt replacements. Yeah, cereal, exactly. And it's actually much easier than running the risk of basically eating dirt or getting it from water.
And see, the reason the 20% to 30% tends to fluctuate as far as people that have been diagnosed with B12 is the B vitamin family are co-vitamins. Meaning, if you start being deficient in one, it's hard to pinpoint it because the other ones overcompensate to try and hide that deficiency. So unless you start suspecting that you have something wrong in your system as far as the B vitamins are concerned, and dig to give yourself that suspicion to go to the doctor, that number may be higher.
Yeah, I agree. And also age groups matter too, because I've seen different age groups. The older people tend to be, the more that number seems to go up. So I think the 20% figure, I think, was for people over 50 is if I remember right, the one that I've seen. But my point is this, that if it's a problem that's commonly found in omnivorous diets, and do you really want to highlight it as something that is like a minus against the vegan diet?
Well, it's, to me, it's more of a logical thing when it comes to B12 and the supplements, because since there has not been found a definitive plant source recently, or since B12 has been discovered, let's say, unless you get it from the soil somehow in your food, that it has to come from some sort of meat source. It is logical to extrapolate that there is probably not an all-natural B12 supplement that doesn't contain some sort of meat byproduct in it.
The B12 that is used to fortify foods is basically a synthetic, vitamin. It's not from animal sources though.
Yeah, and see,
that's what. But animals don't make B12. It's made by bacteria, so it's not an animal source. It's a bacteria source.
Okay, I may have to look that up to see, because I am always, I'm not going to be, trying to pound things in or something like that, is if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I can find stuff to the contrary. It is bacteria that is produced by the large intestine. So
no,
yeah, that is according to veganhealth.org.
Can you read the sentence? Sorry.
Let me see. It has long been... Okay, wait a minute. Let me read this. Okay, it says the article goes on to say it has been long assumed that B12 is produced by bacteria in the large intestine, aka the colon, but since B12 is produced below the ileum where B12 is absorbed, it is not available for absorption. This theory is reinforced by the fact that many species of primarily vegetarian animals eat their feces. That's a little disturbing. Eating feces allows them to obtain B12 in their diets of plant foods.
Yeah. So that is true. There are some animals that do that, and my whole point is that we as people wouldn't find that palatable, and you can also get sick from eating your own poop. So it's certainly safer to get it from a fortified food or just a supplement. And my other point is that if you look up the stats for the global consumption of vitamin B12, 90% is actually bought up by the animal agriculture industry. And the reason for that is that because of the factory farmed conditions that animals are raised in nowadays, they don't get to graze like they did in the old days. So before, when you had your cows and whatever, roaming, and they were eating the grass, they would get enough B12 because of the dirt that would just kind of come up with the grass, and they were just ingesting enough of it. And nowadays, when they're usually, kind of kept in pens or, places where they don't have free range and roaming rights, they don't get enough B12 themselves. So they are supplemented. So if you look up, stats on this, it's estimated that about 90% are being sold to the animal agriculture industry.
Can you shoot me a citation on that, please?
Yep, I will. One up in a second. But my point here is as well that if you have the choice of getting your B12 via a supplement that is fed to an animal, and then you have to kill the animal and then get it that way, or if you can just take the supplement directly, it's not just an ethical question. I also want to make a health question out of it, that with the consumption of the animal, you're also consuming things that are detrimental to you. You have saturated fat and cholesterol, and you have potentially other kind of bioaccumulated toxins in the fats of the animals, organic compounds that they are many more levels, orders of magnitude higher than if you just ate plant sources because of bioaccumulation. So if you're eating a steak, that cow, by the time it got old enough to be slaughtered and cut up into a steak, has already eaten hundreds or potentially thousands of pounds worth of whatever feed it was being given. So any of the pesticide residue, any of the other kind of pollutants that would have been on that food, they bioaccumulate, and now you're eating it because most of that stuff is stored in fatty tissues. And it's estimated that 95% of the persistent organic compounds that people get in their diet, they come from animal fats. So if you just cut out animal fats and eat plants, you're reducing your exposure to these chemicals by 95%, even if you're eating non-organic.
Oops, sorry, I almost interrupted you.
No, go ahead. And meanwhile, I'm trying to find you the link about the...
From a natural health standpoint, the body does not assimilate things that are synthetic very well, meaning that you don't get 100% of the benefit of what you are intaking if it is synthetic. Dr. Feingold, from feingold.org site, for many, many years, did tests on people and found out that synthetic additives to food can actually cause modifications in behavior, like manic depression, like ADD, like ADHD, can also cause migraines and things of that nature. Also, too, there are two different types of people who raise livestock and poultry. There are those that eschew, for lack of a better term, the injections of antibiotics and steroids and things in the meat. There are people that grass feed their cows, and they make sure that the pesticides aren't, in the fields in which the cows graze, which is becoming harder and harder today because of Monsanto and their subsidization of GMO crops and spraying insecticides on those crops. And also farmers who feel that it is easier to use Roundup on crops and things of that nature than to try and raise their crops organically. So there is a disparaging thing there. I have had grass-fed beef, as opposed to the beef that you can find mass-produced and mass packaged in the store. It is a better cut of meat.
I won't argue that with you. I used to eat meat very regularly. I was a big proponent of grass-fed beef, and I didn't mind paying extra for it. I mean, sometimes you pay 3-4 times the price for it. And I absolutely did that. I thought it was healthier, and for the same reasons you've said. So I'm not even arguing that. I totally agree with you. What I'm saying, though, is that even if it's got the perfect organic, no pesticides, no herbicides, no nothing, you're still getting cholesterol and saturated fat.
Well, that is because anything with a liver has cholesterol. So we are born with livers, us ourselves, because let us use the basic in terms, we too are animals. We are classified as mammals. We are born with livers. Therefore, we are born with cholesterol levels. Anything we eat that has a liver has cholesterol. This is why in a well-balanced diet, you need to have your greens, you need to have your fruits to balance out and keep those cholesterol levels even. And that is why in a regularly scheduled balanced diet, you should not have more than 3 to 6 ounces of lean meats like poultry or turkey or fish or even pork, because there are some lean parts of a pig, a day. Most nutritionists and most people that come with dietary plans for people that have meat do not even recommend people eat red meat more than 2 times a week. Because that is the one meat that, even though there are lean cuts of the cow, that is still the one meat that has the most cholesterol, not counting shellfish, because the cholesterol in shrimp is off the charts. But the main reason that you just don't sit and eat meat 24/7 is because those vegetables and those fruits will help balance out the cholesterol that you're eating by helping your body actually keep those levels at normal ranges. Not considering the fact that some cholesterol problems are hereditary.
I definitely won't deny that there's a genetic component to it, but the research that I've seen actually around saturated fat and cholesterol is that for 40, 50, almost 50 years now, it's been demonstrated through hundreds of clinical trials where they've done actual controlled feeding experiments, keeping people in controlled environments. So not just like a dietary survey where they ask you like, oh, what did you have last Tuesday, but actual controlled feeding experiments. It's demonstrated over and over again through hundreds of studies that any intake of saturated fat and cholesterol will raise your blood serum cholesterol level. So there is no level that is safe in the sense that it won't raise your cholesterol. Your body will produce all the cholesterol it needs. It's certainly not a nutrient that needs to be absorbed or eaten. And cholesterol is only found in animal products, and saturated fat is primarily found in animal products. Some plants do have saturated fat, but or actually I think most do, but in very little amounts. And the consumption of either raises your blood serum cholesterol level. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that there's a lot of confusion around this, because there are lots of what are called cross-sectional observational studies that are purposely trying to mislead people to think that there's no link between the dietary consumption and what your blood serum cholesterol level actually goes to. And the reason for that is that there are genetic differences, like you just said, between people. So like, you know, you and I might be the same height, same build, everything, like, and you might be luckier in the genetic lottery than me. And if you eat the same amount of saturated fat and cholesterol as me, your cholesterol level might still be like, let's just say 180, which is considered okay by most doctors. And mine might be 200. Or, you know, Logan's might be 220 because maybe he's even luckier than me. Mm-hmm. But what will happen is if all three of us get a baseline measurement and check what our dietary consumption is of saturated fat and cholesterol, and we get a baseline reading of our blood serum cholesterol, and then we reduce the amount of saturated fat and cholesterol we're eating, all three of us will get a drop in our cholesterol guaranteed. And the relationship is so well defined that there's an actual equation that can predict it, and it's been, again, demonstrated in hundreds and hundreds of of these trials going back from I think the earliest one was like the end of the 60s or early 70s. So this is like not new information, but people will purposely make studies that try to, you know, point people in this idea that it doesn't matter. And then another way they will try to trick people too is that they will show people with really high cholesterol, and if you increase the saturated fat and cholesterol consumption in a person that's already got really high cholesterol, their numbers really won't move after a certain point. Because if your cholesterol is already at, say, you know, some max, like it's like maybe 250 or something, mm-hmm. So it's really high, eating another 2 eggs, you know, every morning above and beyond what you're already eating is probably not going to move it, or if it does, it'll move by a tiny bit. Yeah. So these are kind of tricks that people do, but if you actually reduce their cholesterol intake, it will drop.
Well, oh yes, I mean, I completely agree, and you know, there are ways to skew findings, there are ways to skew studies in either direction. I mean, you know, facts are facts. You can either, you know, see the facts for what they are, cite them, and, you know, try to explain it to people, or as is often done, people try and fit facts, you know, use the facts and tailor them to fit the narrative that they're trying to push. Not that you're trying to push one. Let me make that clear. Hazen says in the chat, so why are so many people on cholesterol meds having bypass surgery and heart attacks if our body regulates it? Because the majority of, and now I'm talking about a U.S. population, the majority of the U.S. population consumes larger than normal serving sizes. They consume junk food. We're talking Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, fast food. They're doing convenience instead of, you know, pre-preparing meals, planning their meals for the week. They're not eating balanced diets. They're not doing the exercises that they need to be doing. They are not paying attention to what they're putting in their bodies. And when you're eating high fat, high protein foods, and you're already predisposed to certain medical conditions, you're going to get on those cholesterol meds. You are going to have blocked arteries. You're going to have bypass surgery, and you're going to increase your risk of heart attack. When you're not supposed to have more than 3 to 6 ounces of meat, and you go to a restaurant and you have a baked potato and a 16-ounce steak, two things that don't mesh well together on the plate, because you need to have green salad with a steak in order for the roughage to help keep your colon clean, you are doing more harm to your system than good. Not only because you're not having a balanced meal on your plate, but because you're having an exorbitant amount of this red meat than you should have.
I would agree with most of all what you said. I just want to mention 2 things. One is that red meat is not just like cow meat, so not just beef. Basically, all mammals are considered red meat. So pork is actually technically a red meat, and it's classified as such in the World Health Organization report too, that said it's a likely carcinogen. So processed meat is a known carcinogen, and red meat consumption is a likely carcinogen. But my point is this, to answer the chat question too. Your body can, you know, down-regulate to some extent. Like, it won't make any more, but it can't like clear away all of the excess that people are consuming. So what happens is, if you look at studies that have been done on like hunter-gatherer people living traditional, studies, the natural total total cholesterol levels should be below 150. And that might be shocking to a lot of people. I know it was for me, because I used to be always around like 180, and I was always told that was healthy and it was fine. And what they have seen is that basically babies that are healthy at birth, and like I said, people living traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyles, and basically all primates in the wild, they all have total cholesterols below 150, and your LDL should be below 70. And what happens is, if you look at the body of evidence, you look at somebody like, I can't remember his name. Is it Logan will probably know, I'm sure he'll cover it. But I think it was Dr. William C. Roberts, I think is his name. He's been studying heart disease for like 50 years. And, he basically has said that the only thing that is a requirement for atherosclerosis, for the plaque to actually form in your arteries, is to have a total blood serum cholesterol level over 150. So if it's below 150, no matter what else you're doing, all the other things that are considered risk factors, like smoking and being overweight and being a couch potato and sedentary and all this kind of stuff, you still won't get heart disease in the sense of the plaque building up. The plaque buildup requires that your total cholesterol be over 150. And if you look at population studies, the only people who kind of normally have those low levels are the people I mentioned already, and the people who are basically eating a vegan or near vegan diet. So if you're looking at people like the Okinawans, they had 96% of their calories coming from plants. If you look at the people living on the Isle of Crete back in the 50s, that's where the Mediterranean diet originated from. They were eating 93% of their calories from plants. And even on that same island, the people who were wealthy and they were eating meat pretty much every day, they had similar disease rates to basically the mainland Greece, as well as the U.S. And the reason why they were doing those studies was because they couldn't explain how most people on that island had very, very low rates of heart disease and cancer deaths. They were basically like orders of magnitude, healthier and dying less. So they went and investigated them, and they did food survey analysis to find out what they were eating. And those people were eating 93% plants. So that equates to eating meat like once or twice, like a month. It's very rare.
Well, so even when you look at the American Heart Association's established outline for a general food guide for people that do include meat into their diet, you're looking at 6 servings of grains per day, 3 to 4 servings of vegetables, 4 servings of fruits. You're looking at 3 to 4 servings of nuts, which is, far greater than your 2 to 3, your 1 to 2 servings of meat that they recommend a day. So, yeah, I mean, it is more beneficial, actually less than 6 ounces per day. Excuse me, I read the chart wrong. Which is 3 ounces of cooked meat about the size of a computer mouse, 3 ounces of grilled fish, and even they recommend fish and chicken as opposed to red meat like pork and beef. So when you're looking at 3 ounces of lean meat, as opposed to 4, 8, 12 servings of nuts, fruits, and vegetables a day, that can be anywhere between 2 tablespoons of seeds to a cup of, I'm reading the thing as I'm talking, a half a cup of, let's say, strawberries. You're looking at more of the other foods than you are of meat. So it's not like the people that are pushing for a balanced diet are pushing for diets with an overabundance of meat. Again, in that context, what has gone out of control is the actual portion sizes.
Yeah, to that, I would say that for most people, it's actually an advantage to have a large portion size because your stomach is made in such a way that, it's however big. And if you're eating really calorie dense food like meat or dairy, you can't really have much of it unless you are going to exceed your calorie requirements. So if you actually look at like how many potatoes you would have to eat, for example, to get 400 calories, which would be like an okay size, like, mini meal or like snack, look at how many or how much volume wise you'd have to eat from, say, cheese. The cheese is probably going to be like, this tiny little amount, and the potatoes is going to be like this amount. This will fill up your stomach and you're going to feel like satiated. You're not going to overeat. But if you just ate that little block of cheese, your stomach is still like, hey man, I'm not full. Like, give me more stuff. And then it's easier to overeat. So for most people, that's an advantage.
And also, I think, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. Also, I think from a psychological standpoint, when somebody goes, you only get 3 ounces of this, somebody's going, well, 3 ounces doesn't seem like much. Like when people go, well, it's X amount of, let's say, whole grain pasta. But when you actually cook that X amount of whole grain pasta and put it on your plate, it looks like a larger portion because you've cooked it. Once you've mixed all the food together, even if it's just like a fruit and veggie plate or, pasta with shiitake mushrooms and a garlic sauce with onions and stuff, by the time if you follow those food portions in their proper proportions, it's a lot of food. And a lot of people are just, they're focused on, well, 3 ounces isn't much. No, but when you put those 3 ounces with a salad, and we all know that, to a proper portion of a salad takes up about half the plate, if not 2/3. And then, you have your starches. When you eat all that together, that 3 ounces is not that bad, but you're balancing it out with the grains and the vegetables and any of the nuts and seeds you have put in that salad in order to make it well-rounded. The problem comes, and the bad habit comes, when people say, okay, I want an 8-ounce steak, I want a small bowl of salad, and I want like 3/4 of a cup of white rice. Now you're putting highly processed food into the mix, the white rice, instead of having the brown rice or, other whole foods, because I am a proponent of the closer you get to the food that occurs in nature, the more healthier it is going to be for you and the more your body can assimilate it and make the most out of it. So, and the problem is trying to get people to rethink how they eat and retrain them as far as portions are concerned, because people have gotten used to 3 square meals a day when 4 to 6 small meals during the day is a whole lot better.
I think for a lot of people that is the case. Maddie, it's really funny because I think we're in like 90% agreement. Most just subtract out the meat from the recipe you just kind of went through, and I would be like 2 thumbs up. It's great. So yeah, I think I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time too, and I want to make sure Logan has time as well. I would kind of sum up my point at this point, and then I want to go to another topic in the sense that, the way you have to look at food, it is a package deal. And all I'm saying is that the benefit that you are getting from the meat consumption, you could replace with plants. And with the meat, you are getting the saturated fat and cholesterol, which directly, leads to heart disease. And with the plant sources of those same kind of nutrients that are of concern, you are getting beneficial things. You are getting fiber, you are getting more antioxidants and nutrients in general. There's a great study that was done. They analyzed over, I think it was like 3,100 foods for antioxidant content, and they ranked everything by that. And when you average the sum total of all the animal foods that they checked versus the plant foods had on average 64 times the amount of antioxidants that the animal foods did. So there are lots of good reasons why you are actually benefiting from replacing that meat with some other plant source. So eat an extra potato, eat an extra head of broccoli, whatever the case might be. A bowl of oatmeal in the morning instead of eggs and sausage. You're getting fiber, you're getting other nutrients that you that you aren't getting from the meat, and you're also avoiding the saturated fat and the cholesterol. So that's where I would sum up to this point. And I don't know if you want to add just something else, but I would want to go to another like topic.
Well, I do have a question that I want to pose to you, and It is one of another major debate between vegans and not vegans is the heme versus non-heme iron debate. Because
Perfect.
from what I understand,
that's where I wanted to go. Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
From what I understand, and from what I have been able to, the information that I have been able to glean, non-heme iron isn't as readily absorbed into the system without supplements helping it as heme iron. And for some of you in the live chat that don't know the difference, heme iron comes from meat, non-heme iron comes from plant sources. I just wanted to clear that up in case there were people in the chats that didn't know that. And the numbers, as far as percentage are concerned, I believe are 2 to 20% for non-heme iron and 3 to 30 or 35% for heme iron. And the main reason there's such a wide range in the absorption ranges is because the more iron your body needs, the more it's going to take in.
Yep. I actually want to say a few things about the iron absorption. So there's a few things to know. One is that you can actually get too much iron in your diet, and it's directly attributable, or I should say not attributable. So it's directly linked with increased chance of coronary disease as well as some other illnesses. I think diabetes is also kind of worsened by too much iron, but the heart disease I'm sure of. I don't quote me on the diabetes one. And the reason why they suspect that is the case is that it's an oxidant. So basically when you have the iron floating around in your blood and it's mixing with the oxygen, it actually forms free radicals. Like it's basically like rusting. If you can imagine, a piece of iron just left out, it gets rusty. So you can actually get too much. That's one thing. And with the plant sources of iron, you are right. They are less readily absorbed than the animal-based ones, the heme iron. But the thing to note is that with the plant sources, your body is actually able to basically stop. So like stop the absorption. And I don't know the exact mechanism because I've seen this a long time ago, so I don't remember the way it works. But with the heme iron, your body cannot stop the consumption, like the absorption of it. It will actually be possible to eat too much and for it to go, to too high a level. So the fact that it's less readily absorbed is actually an advantage in this sense that you can't overeat like plant sources of iron. You can't overdo it, but with animal products, you can actually absorb too much iron.
And thank you for passively aggressively correcting me on the pronunciation of heme.
Sorry, that was not meant to be bad. It's just that's the way I've always heard it said. So,
being an herbalist, I tend to favor more the Latin classifications of things, and you tend to pronounce that last vowel at the end. So it's
no problem. It was not meant as a slight. It's just the way I've always said it. So it's like unconscious.
Iron is much like, to me, I've always equated heme iron and non-heme iron like the fat soluble vitamin A. A lot of it is not good for you. A lot of minerals, as a matter of fact, are, if you take too much, you're going to cause more harm than good to your system. And heme iron is one of those that you need a precarious balance to have. Mm-hmm. I was kidding, OG. I have been anemic most of my life. And as of recently, I just now, because of financial issues, have been able to start getting a more balanced diet in my system. And because the only thing I have been able to afford up until a couple of months ago has been, and everybody's going to cringe, ramen noodles and canned soup. You could just imagine how my health has been the past many, many months. And the fact that I keep cringing every time I had to pop open that bottle, that can of soup to heat it up, to mix it with the noodles, to have some kind of food. And I know it's but the heme iron to me when I mix it with the vegetables that have the non-heme iron, it actually absorbs better into my system. I've noticed that because I have spent weeks cleansing where I have eaten fruits, vegetables, and nuts and left the meats and stuff out of my diet. And I have needed other supplements to help me assimilate the iron that I'm intaking from the vegetables. As opposed to introducing the iron in my system and watching the dark circles under my eyes disappear faster because of the combination in the different irons I am putting in my system. And I know that's anecdotal, but
I would just say, you know, going back to an earlier comment you made too, that there's different recommendations and there's different ways to meet the requirements you have for various nutrients. So some people will tell you, you know, you should eat this many seeds. Some people say you should have less or more. And my point is that is that there isn't necessarily, you know, just one prescriptive thing that is perfect for everyone. Maybe, you know, you do absorb it less well than somebody else, but my point is that you can get enough from plants, and it might just be a matter of just, you know, playing around with it in your diet a little bit to see where is a good, you know, workable like level for you. And if you look at again, you know, across the board, like population studies, there is no demonstration that that vegans or even vegetarians have lower levels of iron. There's no indication that they have more, you know, anemia. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's a like a minus against the diet in and of itself.
No. The other thing that is, and I will ask you this question, you having the vegan lifestyle and I not, how many different types of plant sources must you ingest to get the amino acids in order for your body to properly process the protein that you're getting from the plants?
So this is like a common misconception, and probably the most frequent question that vegans get is like, where do you get your protein? All plants actually have all the essential amino acids. They do have them in various amounts, but most people think that that's not the case. And a lot of this comes back to kind of like myths that were started probably like, I think it was in the 70s. This protein combining myth, it's called. I think it actually was from Vogue magazine, if I remember right. But some
Vogue magazine.
Yeah, literally, that's what people are basing their like nutritional knowledge from. But that's where it started. This lady wrote an article explaining that people had to combine vegetarian sources of food to get the right balance of amino acids. And the reason being is that like you take something like beans, they might be really high in some of the amino acids, but relatively low in the other ones. It's not that they don't have any, it's just that they have like the ratio isn't 1-to-1. If you look at meat, it's basically like 1-to-1 all the way across the board. And with the plant sources, you have some some that are higher in one particular or other and lower in others. And so the idea was that in order to get a complete protein, you would need to get like your rice and beans at the same time, because where the rice was high, the bean was low, and vice versa, and then together they were the right ratio all the way across.
I believe the NIH considers those amino acids incomplete amino acids because there aren't enough in one food. Henceforth, you have to combine them.
Yeah, but it's actually demonstrated that this is not correct. So there are many studies that have shown that basically if you are just eating enough calories, you cannot be protein deficient. There are no cases of actual protein deficiency short of starving. It used to be believed that like kwashiorkor, I think that's how it's pronounced, was a protein deficiency disease, and it's been proven since that it's not. So the only way you can actually be protein deficient is if you're not getting enough calories to maintain your body weight. So the way your body works, it's actually really adept at breaking down and combining the amino acids as it needs. So even if you just ate like rice in the morning and then you ate beans at lunch, even though they're not at all like remotely in the same meal, your body will be fine, like getting all the right like blend and mix that it needs. And the other thing that is something to note is just that in practice, you pretty much never tend to eat things that are like really far out of whack anyway, because you look at like hummus. Most people don't just sit down and eat hummus by itself. people eat it with like pita bread, or they'll eat it with some other vegetables, like dip carrots in it or whatever. And between those natural blends that have just sort of, come up the way people tend to eat, you're just getting those things. So rice and beans goes together, like corn and, something else, I don't know, but like it all works out, and there is no cases of protein deficiency.
Okay. And also, as far as another argument that is floating around out there is cognitive thoughts and cognitive actions being improved by the ingestion of meat. And I'm looking at an abstract from a study done in April 2007 from the Journal of Nutrition that said that, let me see this. It says, a randomized controlled school feeding study was conducted in rural Embu district, Kenya, to test for a causal link between animal source food intake and changes in micronutrient nutrition and growth, cognitive and behavioral outcomes. I'm reading you, the abstract, that way you get the full picture. 12 primary schools were randomly assigned to one of 4 groups. Children in standard 1 classes received the local plant-based dish githeri as a mid-morning school snack, and I may have mispronounced that. I'm sorry if I did. Supplemented with meat, milk, or fat added to equalize energy content in all feedings. Controlled children received no feedings, but participated in data collection. Main outcome measures assessed at baseline and longitudinally were 24-hour food intake recall, anthropometry, cognitive function, physical activity, and behaviors during school-free play. For cognitive function, the meat group showed the steepest rate of increase on Raven's progressive matrices scores in zone-wide school and end-term total arithmetic test scores. The meat group showed the greatest increase in percentage time and levels of physical activity and in initiative and leadership behaviors compared with all other groups.
Okay, I mean, I don't know the specifics of this study. I would just say that we're not really getting a whole lot of information on what else they're eating, whether they even had sufficient calories from their
That is
diets.
just an abstract. I'm putting the link in the side chat for you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. But I'm just saying that, like, we don't really know what other things were controlled or not controlled for, and it's possible that they were actually calorie deficient on the other the control groups or whatever. We really don't know. So I think there's no body of evidence that I've seen that shows that people following a vegan diet are any less or more likely to be cognitively like functional or not. And then as far as like long-term brain health, one of the best things you can do is to basically avoid the buildup of the plaque in arteries. And there's a lot of evidence now that shows that brain illnesses like Alzheimer's are actually directly linked to high cholesterol levels, and it's literally clogging the arteries going into the brain. So the oxygen is being deprived, and that's actually one of the things that was observed in the very first Alzheimer's patient when they did an autopsy on the lady after she died. One of the things they noted was that there was like a sticky residue buildup in her brain, in the arteries, and there's a growing body of evidence that shows that. So I haven't seen any large-scale studies that would show otherwise. And I think I'll look at the study. That's fine, but like right now, that doesn't sound very convincing to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just the abstract, so it didn't go into detail as to, the abstract never really goes into full detail as to what the other test groups entailed. I think that would have taken up probably a good hour's worth of the debate if we would have gone into the full study. And I didn't want to do that. But there have been other studies as well. I could probably find the sightings to it if I did a search, and peer reviews that say that the ingestion of meat actually leads to improved cognitive function and other improved performances, both mentally and physically. But I would be remiss in not disclosing that I don't have the other citations at hand.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just being cognizant of the time here. Like, I really want to make sure Logan gets time too. Do you want to just really quickly go through the calcium and zinc, if you don't mind, and then we'll hand it to Logan.
Okay. Now, as far as calcium and zinc is concerned, I'm a little more middle of the road, because I'm always looking for other sources of calcium to intake because I am lactose intolerant.
Mhm.
So I will be more readily with the dark leafy greens like kale and spinach and, that particular group in order to get my calcium and absorb my calcium a little more readily with some vitamin D and some magnesium, which are the other two that you need to readily absorb calcium in your system to avoid bone spurs and such. So as far as calcium linked to, milk and dairy products is concerned, I have to concede that from a lactose intolerant point of view.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, though, too, that the majority of the world is lactose intolerant. So, that's a great point. And the thing is that it's actually quite easy to get enough calcium from just everyday kind of normal foods that people actually enjoy. So not everybody's going to say that they like eating kale or spinach, but if you look at just kind of eating like something like oatmeal and you throw some raisins in there and bananas and apples. Like one orange has, I think it's like 55 milligrams of calcium. So you can get it just throughout the day in little chunks and pieces as you go, just eating normal foods. Definitely just go to nutrition websites like just type in like, butternut squash nutrition and look at the value. Like 1 cup of butternut squash has something like almost like 100 milligrams of calcium. A half a block of tofu is going to put you like almost to half of what your requirement is for the day. So it's actually quite easy to get enough calcium. Zinc is the same way. I actually just did a video recently where I talked about zinc in particular because there was an article that I was kind of trying to debunk where they were saying that it was difficult for kids to get enough zinc from their normal everyday foods. And I'll put this link in here as well for you guys to look at. They will say that plant sources of zinc are like 50% like harder to absorb for people than from animal sources. So they recommend that you multiply the requirements by like 1.5 to account for that. And when you look, it's still like so easy to get, for an adult, you're supposed to get for males, which is higher than for women. In general, it's like you're supposed to get 11, even if you milligrams. And even if you multiply that by 1.5, you're still only looking at 16, 17 milligrams. And when you look at the chart here of, what you're getting, you're like, look at like, let's say, it lists tofu as one good source. You're getting 2 milligrams. One thing of garbanzo beans, 1.3, walnuts, 0.9, almonds 1.1, lentils 1.3, oatmeal is 2.3, and that's just like 1 cup of oatmeal.
Well, see, I never. That is why at the end of the video, on my half of the collaboration, I pride myself on trying to be middle of the road, which is why I said at the beginning of my stuff is I'm not saying that you can't find most of these in vegetable sources, because that would have been an outright lie. The nutritional tables I put at the end, especially the one for zinc, illustrated that there were more fruit and vegetable sources and nut sources for zinc than there were for meat. And zinc is a key element in the body to help with your immune system and keep your immune system functioning, and also keep other bodily systems functioning normally, which also leads to a balanced diet. If you don't have zinc in your diet, you have, a lot of people don't know this, you start getting little white dots in the pink parts of your fingers underneath your fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I didn't know that, but
your body gives you little cues when you're deficient in things. When you're deficient in zinc, you get little white dots underneath your fingernails. You start craving foods that tend to have more of the nutrient that you're lacking, and a lot of people don't listen to their bodies in that respect. And that's another natural health aspect I try to teach people. I have had vegetarians come to me absolutely perplexed. Like, I don't know, I've been a vegetarian for like a year and a half. Why am I craving beef? And I'm like, are you taking a B complex? Are you taking calcium supplements? Are you taking amino acids? And if they say no, I'm like, those are the three main constituents in that particular red meat that you're craving that you're not giving your body. You've got to learn to listen to your body, because sometimes those cravings make sense.
Okay. I mean, I think it's fine. We're not really disagreeing. You are saying that it is possible to get it from plants. So I don't think there's really an argument there. I would just say the same thing, that if you can get it from plants, why wouldn't you? Because you're avoiding the saturated fat and the cholesterol. So, okay, cool. Listen, I'm actually, I think, pretty okay with what we've talked about. I don't know if you have any questions for me, or if we can move on to Logan. Like, I'm good.
We can move on to Logan.
Okay, cool. So Logan, the floor is yours.
All right. Yeah, just for time restraints, I'm just gonna like. Sometimes what happens in debates is like people. I'm not saying you're doing this, but like the people will kind of shotgun arguments. So like if somebody asks a question, like it's best to just answer that one question like in a short answer and then move on. Just because of time, because sometimes people will just bring up all sorts of other things, you know. So I got some questions, just to sum up what he was just talking about, all the deficiencies in the video there. For a deficiency claim to be valid, you have to prove that vegans on average are more deficient than meat eaters in what you're claiming they're deficient in. So let's say protein, calcium, like do you have anything that says vegans are more deficient in any of those things on average than meat eaters?
That would depend on how the vegan has planned his diet out in the day. Just as there are people that are omnivores that are deficient in food.
On average, though. Like you need like a specific like study or research showing that on average, vegans are more deficient in protein than meat eaters for protein to be a valid deficiency.
All right, one moment.
Okay, well, I mean, while you're looking that up, I'll just let you know that protein deficiencies don't exist. So you're looking up nothing.
Well, I know right that, now, but what I'm actually looking at is abstracts and stuff that assess certain indices. So not exactly a protein deficiency. And I don't believe my thing is the absorption of protein and the synergy that it has with amino acids. That was one of my main issues. I may not have made that clear on my half of the video.
Okay, so yeah, let me reference that here. So when you get amino acids from plants, they're already in the perfect form. They're in amino acids, so that's what your body needs. So when you actually eat animal products, you're getting protein. The animal itself has already fused together the amino acids into protein. So what you actually have to do then is your body needs to now break down that protein back into amino acids. And that's just an extra step you don't even need to do. So it's like it shows that it's just completely unnecessary for that. But then also there's a study, I could post it later, I don't have it on hand, but vegans actually do consume less protein than meat eaters. I think it's about 20%. But then their vegans' plasma protein is higher than meat eaters' protein, which means that they're actually getting more of the protein in their blood because it's coming in the form of amino acids from the right source from plants. And they're better off doing that even though they consume less.
That, again, would be contingent on an omnivore's diet and whether or not it is a balanced diet. Because when you balance out the diet, an omnivore is getting more fruits, vegetables, and nuts than they are getting meat sources.
Okay, so yeah, when we talk about balance, so there's been studies that shown having meat once a week, just one serving of meat per week, has been shown to almost double risk of disease. I could also link that study afterwards. And that shows that nobody can say have meat in moderation and still be healthy. Like, I don't think, like, what is moderation? Can you even tell me, like, what moderation is before bad things happen?
Once or twice a month for red meat and no more than 6 ounces at a sitting.
Okay. So would you say is meat necessary if you're only going to consume it once a month or twice a month? Like, what's the point? Would you say it's even necessary for a diet?
The red meat, such as beef in particular?
Sure. Anything. Any meat.
All right. Any meat, it depends on your particular health, because there are people with connective tissue diseases that need to eat the meat. Okay. That have been told by their doctors and that have been proven by science that they need to eat meat sources in order to keep the connective tissues working.
Okay. Whoops. So let's just jump over that for a second. So I mean, for that claim to be true, you would have to tell me what exactly are the properties in the meat that are helping the connective tissue. But let's just jump over that for a second and just say, blanket statement for everybody who doesn't have connective tissue disorders, you, me, anybody else, do we need to consume meat?
Yes.
And why?
You need to consume meat in a balanced diet to help higher cognitive functions, a healthier nervous system. And the main reason that we balance meat out with vegetables, grains, fruits, and nuts is in order for our systems to stay clean, and so fats do not stay in our large intestine, and so that the roughage can actually keep our systems clean. It is a balanced diet. It has been proven in several studies, and I can probably find them after the show, that meat consumption leads to higher cognitive thought function. It also leads to better performances in the physical realm as far as physical activity is concerned, higher rates of memory retention.
Okay, so that's like 3 arguments here. So let me just go through that here. So athleticism. So athleticism is actually hurt from eating animal products, because animal products cause inflammation. And when you exercise, you don't want inflammation in your muscles. And you actually want to be consuming inflammatory foods, because after your muscles the fibers start to tear, the blood rushes to your muscle to try to repair it. It becomes inflamed, and you want to recover that as quick as possible. So when your blood is alkaline and it has, you're consuming anti-inflammatory foods, the recovery process is quicker. And then also the plasma protein, the thing I mentioned earlier, protein repairs cells and muscles. And when you got higher plasma protein, that helps you repair muscles. So athleticism is definitely better on a whole foods plant-based diet. Also, I have studies that I could show you that a whole foods plant-based diet, especially involving raw fruits, actually increases serotonin, happiness, and depression is decreased. And I could link that to you. And my question for you would be, how does meat make your brain function better, and what is like the actual ingredients and mechanisms that's happening? Because I don't think like you could even explain that, but I'll give you a shot here. And then also what you said about leaving your insides the cleanest. Now it's been proven that a fruit-based diet will actually the digestion is insanely better than anything else, especially meat. Meat leads to constipation and all sorts of issues. Fruit-based diet, fruit will leave your stomach within half an hour. It's digested very easily and leaves your colon the cleanest. And so you'll have no debris in your colon. Debris in your colon leads to colon cancer. When you eat meat, the carcinogens build up in your colon and you get colon cancer. So, I mean, I just had to get that all out because that was 3 arguments in a row. That's what I mean about shotgunning arguments. Like it takes a while to answer all 3 things, but go ahead.
Okay. I did find one of these particular studies. This is dated back in 2015, so it was recent. These are findings from a study. It says researchers think they have finally found out why humans have larger brains than our evolutionary ancestors. The answer, meat. Vegetarian, vegan, and raw diets can be healthy, likely far healthier than the typical American diet, and I'm making that stipulation for a reason. But to continue to call these diets natural for humans in terms of evolution is a bit of a stretch, according to 2 recent independent studies. Meat eating and cooking food made us human, the studies suggest, enabling the brains of our pre-human ancestors to grow dramatically over a few million years. One study suggests that the high calories found in meat help fuel development of the human brain. The researchers believed it would have been impossible for early humans to gather enough calories from meat-free foods to feed their growing brains. On the flip side, if gorillas were to develop a human-like brain, they would need to eat 700 additional calories per day, an extra 2 hours of eating all those greens. The bottom line is it is certainly possible to survive on an exclusively raw diet in our modern day, but it was most likely impossible to survive on an exclusively raw diet when our species appeared. And that was from Herculano Huzel from Live Science.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. I've heard the whole article before, just like before you go on. We've done lots of debates, right? So all these things come up like a lot of times.
Yeah.
So the meat grew brains thing, there's multiple answers to that. It's like, first of all, it's just completely irrelevant to look back and be like, well, this might have happened in history. This is a theory, so therefore we should be doing that right now because of this theory. I mean, that's one argument I should just put on the table there. The next thing is there's no glucose in meat, so your brain needs 60% glucose to function. So brain growth comes from glucose. Now, what is a better theory that makes more sense is humans are frugivores. If you look at what type of animal you evolved from, most people would say monkeys, and just look at what you're closest to right now just by looking at a monkey, and you can go through the whole anatomy and biology, and there's so many similar things. Monkeys, frugivores, humans, we all have fruit picking hands. We were eating lots of fruit. Fruit is the most complex food, and when you eat the most complex food, fruit can basically grow trees and life and all this stuff. Your brain becomes more complex. Now, if meat actually grew brains, the carnivores would be more intelligent than the frugivores. And if you look at humans and primates, way more intelligent than a cat, right? Cats would be geniuses if meat grew brains.
Well, actually, we were more evolved. A lot of geneticists as well as archaeologists have been able to link us to the bonobo, which is an omnivore.
Okay, so you could say it's an omnivore, but it only eats meat during survival situations, exactly what humans do. So we are not omnivores, we are biologically frugivores, and that is why you develop atherosclerosis from eating meat. Eating something in a survival situation is not the food that you are adapted to eating and is most optimal to your body.
And meat is most adaptable to our bodies, which comes from millions of years of evolution.
Okay, so you would say that if meat is most adapted to our bodies, you would say for the past 20 million years we've been carnivores or omnivores.
We've been carnivores, omnivores, or some type of vegetarians. Now, recent discoveries have studied that people over in Europe, that some fossils or some mummies have been found over in Europe. Very few, a small percentage, have had mainly vegetarian diets.
So the mummies also had atherosclerosis. Yeah, so the mummies also had hardening on the arteries, the plaque. These are all just claims. And then I've heard even arguments against it saying, well, they might have fried foods and all these other things. But like I said at the beginning, this point isn't relevant to today. You can look back and guess what people did, but it actually means nothing. Like what you have to go by now is science, biology, and just look at what's going on right now. What's going on right now is people are getting sick from animal products. Like what's going on right now is people get sick from milk, right?
Well, it has been proven that the milk that you get from a cow is not the same thing that you get from your mother's breasts, which is why a lot of people are lactose intolerant. However, a lot of illnesses from the meats nowadays is due to the chemicals that we pump into them, the antibiotics, the steroids, and other non-essential things that you are putting in the meat and the livestock as you raise them. These gets transferred into the human body. So if you're not conscious as to where your meat source comes from, you are not getting a pure meat source.
But then it still contains cholesterol, saturated fats, no fiber, heme iron, hormones, all sorts of things that are completely harmful to your body, and you're better off without.
Only if you put the extra hormones in the meat.
No, animals still have hormones in them. I'm filled with hormones. You eat me, you're eating my hormones. Those are
I
added
understand
hormones.
that. But also you have plants that have hormones in them too. Chamomile has estrogen. We have phytoestrogens in soy. So we have a certain amount of natural hormones that we can intake in our body so we don't knock our bodies out of balance. The out of balance happens when you start genetically modifying meats, fruits, and vegetables in order to have more nutrients than nature had intended them to have.
So what you're saying about estrogens, so I'm not sure what you mean by, so phytoestrogens isn't estrogens. So when you eat phytoestrogens, that's not the same as consuming estrogens. And there's no proof out there that phytoestrogens actually increase your estrogen.
The problem herein is there has been proven in herbal studies that there are certain times and certain points in development that there are certain plants that you should not give children per se. Like you don't give toddlers chamomile tea because the estrogen can actually hamper their development because you're introducing a different hormone in their body that they're not ready to process yet in their systems. So during developmental processes, introducing certain foods can actually be more harmful than helpful to the developing body.
Okay. So I want to bring it back to my point here, though, is like what your point was that you absolutely need meat for your brain. That's your overall point. I don't know how it's been proven, though. You haven't told me how it's been proven. You just said meat grew brains.
Let me see here. I am putting some things in the side chat. Oh, I've opened up so many tabs, I can't find them.
So while you're looking that up, let me just ask you this quickly. Do you think we need cow's milk and we need chicken eggs?
You do not need cow's milk. Cow's milk is more harmful for the human body. Chicken eggs are are one of those things that are labeled a perfect food because of the different nutrients that it has in it.
Okay, so chicken eggs have the people who did studies on eggs and claimed that the cholesterol was good for you. Actually, that study was sponsored by the Egg Board and had a whole bunch of people on that study, and that was the only thing that they had to go by. People figured that out. Doctors figured that they did this, and they sued them. And now eggs are no longer allowed to advertise in commercials that they're healthy anymore because they are not by law. So I don't know how anybody could say that they're healthy.
Well, they're not 100 because of the cholesterol, but then again, that leads going back to a balanced diet.
Okay. So even cholesterol in moderation, though, well, and shoot your atherosclerosis up high enough where you could develop problems like heart attacks, strokes, Alzheimer's, or dementia.
You're forgetting
so you can't even say that eating. Sorry?
There are two different types of cholesterol. There are two different types of cholesterol. There's the bad cholesterol that you have to watch levels, and then there's the good cholesterol that has to maintain healthy levels as well.
Yeah. So when you eat eggs or you eat something
that have livers.
So when you eat something like an egg that contains cholesterol, it'll shoot both of those levels up. It'll shoot your bad cholesterol up way higher than your good cholesterol. So it's not even beneficial to increase your good cholesterol with eggs because the bad cholesterol will go up even higher.
Well, that's why you have to eat it in a balanced meal. It's all about balance and moderation.
Okay, but your moderation was once a month. So how many people would do that, and what is the point of that?
Once a month for what?
Well, didn't you say meat in moderation once
I said red meat in moderation once or twice a month. I did not say all meat in moderation once or twice a month.
Okay, so eggs actually have more cholesterol. They're the most dense source of cholesterol than anything else. So if you're saying meat in moderation, eggs in even more moderation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And as far as shellfish are concerned, I eat shrimp maybe once every 2 months because it has a higher cholesterol rate than red meat.
Okay, so you're trying to get cholesterol.
No, I'm not. I said I didn't eat it as often.
Oh, you didn't eat it, though. Okay.
No, I tend to stick to chicken and fish, which would label me in most circles a pesca and poultry type vegetarian.
Okay, so I mean, fish, I mean, I could name all the things that are horrible in fish, like mercury and toxins and cholesterol, all these other things. Chicken contains cancer-causing arsenic. The World Health Organization has linked it to cancer. Like, you could go on and on about how horrible these things are. And I'm just really curious, like, the only justification you seem to have to eat it is for brain function, and I don't even think that you could prove that. So it's like, yeah, your only fallback really is brain function, and just the harmful things in it just outweigh everything else by like 1,000.
I put a link in the side chat, the newest link.
Okay,
Number one,
you can't, like,
mercury levels depend on where the wild caught fish is found. Not the entire ocean does not contain dangerous levels of mercury. Mercury does not occur in high levels naturally in fish. Number two, where you raise the chickens, free range chickens have less, if any, arsenic in them than fish, than chicken that are mass marketed, mass housed, and crammed together in cages to where they have to eat their own shit. So it depends on where you get your meat sources from.
Okay.
So what you just did there was a scare tactic. If you're going,
they all contain cholesterol. They all contain saturated fats. You're talking specifically.
They all
about,
have livers. But you just mentioned arsenic. Livers equal cholesterol. We are born with cholesterol. Anything that has a liver contains cholesterol.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
99%
what you
of all
went
meats
into
come
was
from factory farms, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. What you were alluding to was arsenic, which can be found in chicken feed in mass marketed and cramped conditions in people that do not ethically raise the chickens in order to market them properly. You also mentioned mercury in fish, which does not happen naturally, occurring in high doses in oceans all over the world, which is why some fish is more expensive than others, because where you catch the fish in the ocean makes all the difference.
Okay, so 99% of all meats come from factory farms. So everybody's eating factory farm meat. So it's not an irrelevant point or a scare tactic. If you were going to try to feed the world with these grass-fed, free-range, happy farms, which they're not, everybody dies at the end. It's not happy. And most of them, there's shady stuff going on anyways. They're not going to be even all organic, even though they're grass-fed. So there's still going to be drugs and things involved. But also, you can't feed the world that way. So it's a totally unsustainable diet. Just to try to feed America on a grass-fed diet, you would literally have to plow down the world or half the world, because you are literally just taking the animals and spreading them out. So they're confined in these things for a reason. They're confined in there for a reason because of land usage. It takes up an incredible amount of land usage for 60 billion land animals to be able to feed 8 billion people. And if you were to try to make them all grass-fed, you would destroy the planet.
You could say the same thing about vegetables. It takes 5 to 6 tomato plants per person. So if you were to eradicate the consumption of meat on the planet, multiply 5 tomato plants per person of the population of the world, and how many tomato plants you have to put per acre, and let me know how many habitats have to be destroyed from wild animals in order for us all over the world to have a 100% vegan diet.
None. So 85% of the
crops go to
feed. Well, you're cutting me off. I'm trying to answer the point.
Okay.
I'm trying to answer it. So 85% of the crops go to feed animals in animal agriculture. So just by getting rid of animal agriculture, you're literally getting rid of 85% of crops. You could feed the world 3 times over on a plant-based diet because of the amount of land usage it takes to grow crops to feed humans. It's very inefficient to have to feed big animals like cows and pigs all of these crops and then feed the animals to the humans. You're killing 4 times as much things. The vegan diet has the lowest carbon footprint. You could even develop permacultures, veganic crops, People could do backyard gardening. There's so many things that you could do that are environmentally friendly. When you grow fruit trees, you're literally giving animals habitat and providing oxygen to the world from the tree. It is completely sustainable, but instead they're feeding 85% of the world's crops to animals and destroying the planet.
Well, the thing is, if you loose these animals, okay, let's say we loose these animals and we no longer eat these animals, and we're relying on farmed vegetables for ourselves. Okay, there are billions of people on this planet that need 5 to 6 of each of these vegetable crop plants grown in order for us to have a full diet, which actually need tree nuts and other ways, you know, of fruits and vegetable sources in order to give us our meals daily, in order for us to have a healthy vegan diet. However, the more people we birth on the planet, the more space we're going to need to grow these crops, which eventually is going to encroach upon savannas, mountainous land, and other places, destroying wild animal habitats in order just to feed us. There are more of us than there are more animals on the planet. You have endangered species because people are encroaching, because you need houses, you need buildings, you need people to go do things. You also need to feed these people. And if these people need 5 to 6 of each different type of plant, and excuse my dog, please, 5 to 6 of each different type of plant, that's at least a 4 to 5 acre farm per family.
Yeah. Okay. So they've done the statistics on this. It only takes 1/6 to 1/8, 1/6 to 1/8 of an acre of land to feed an entire family on a vegan diet. It takes multiple acres to feed a family on a animal products diet. So 51% of the world's environmental damage, if you count water usage, greenhouse gases, species extinction, all these things, it all adds up to 51% of environmental damage. It is the world's leading force in destroying the planet, and overpopulation is an issue, but that is a side issue. So if you don't want the planet to be destroyed, that's the first issue that you have to deal with and get rid of animal agriculture. The secondary issue is now let's deal with the overpopulation issue, which involves different things. Now, you're talking about species extinction. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of species extinction. They plow down 1 acre of rainforest every 2 seconds. So if you're against species extinction, you're against animal agriculture.
Okay. But that still doesn't, you still haven't addressed how some people, because of certain diseases, have to have meat. So you're going to be killing these people off in order not to eat meat?
No, I mean, first of all, you'd have to prove that they eat meat. I don't think you've sufficiently proven that yet. There's no magical properties in meat that can cure people. It's been shown to be the exact opposite, that Whole Foods plant-based diet not only prevents diseases, but can reverse a lot of diseases. I've never seen anything that shows that meat will heal people. Let me get this out here. There's a benefit to everything. You could show benefits to cigarettes. The nicotine help with Parkinson's. That does not mean cigarettes are healthy because the nicotine helps with Parkinson's. That it actually does way more harm than good.
You're putting words in my mouth. I never said meat could cure disease.
Well, you just said it helps people with diseases.
I said in certain cases, people cannot go without meat. I did not say meat could cure diseases.
So you're pretty much conceding that the rest of the world should go vegan then, because you're bringing up just people with some disease.
No, I am saying everybody should be on a balanced diet. I am not conceding the vegan issue. I am saying that everybody has their own paths to walk, and that an omnivorous diet is better for some, where a vegan diet is better for others.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that you've sufficiently proven that in any way. You were mentioning that meat grew brains, and you're using that as an excuse because we've adapted to eating meat. Therefore, we should be eating meat. And even though I think that's irrelevant, I think it's funny that you think people should be eating eggs. Like, how many years do you think people have been eating chicken eggs, and how have we adapted to eating chicken eggs?
I have to look up that study.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could just say for 64 million years, fruit has been on Earth. For 20 million years, we've evolved, and the majority of our diet has been the same as any other frugivorous diet, which is like basically fruit-based and leafy greens. So those are the two things that you need to be absolutely healthy in your diet. People will always tell you, eat your greens, right? That it's super important. They're micronutrient dense. And then also fruit, you know, your basic, and that's why one of the reasons why your whole biology fits perfectly with eating a fruit-based diet, and it digests the best and leaves your colon the cleanest and can reverse disease.
And that is why you need a balanced diet.
But
because some of
I mean,
us,
but that's, you can't just say balanced diet though. That doesn't mean anything.
In the world of natural health and holistic medicine, everybody works differently. Okay? Which means different diets, different ways of eating, different balanced diets work better for different people than they work for others. Because some of us metabolize things better than other people metabolize things. All right? That is why some people have to take more supplements than others, because our bodies, our metabolisms all work differently. All of our body chemistries are different. Okay? Can you agree with me on that?
No.
Can you agree with me on that?
No, not at all. So there's very, very minor genetic differences with people, depending on where they come in the world from migration. So like I said, people like have adapted for 20 million years. So your body is basically suited for what you've been doing the most for 20 million years. So we could go over why B12, you need that because people have been dirty people with bacteria all over them. And when they don't shower as much, we live in a sterile environment now with all these soaps and everything. So people are used to being dirty and getting bacteria in their water. And that's why you need B12. Vitamin D comes from sunlight. People have been getting sunlight forever. All the things that you need in your body are based off what you've been doing for 20 million years. Now you can look and be like, well, these people migrated over here and these people ate meat, or we found some bones, or we found some tools and this and that. That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that you're adapted to doing that. That means that they found some things in one area of the world. But for 20 million years, whatever you've been doing the most, that's what you should be doing and leaves you the healthiest.
So you're basically saying archaeological, anthropological, and other scientific findings are irrelevant?
In this situation, yes. In other situations, no.
Okay.
So, I mean, you'd have to prove to me, though, scientifically, as well as showing me bones or whatever you're going to show me. Like, I could show you, let's just say, I could show you during the Paleolithic time, they found tons of fossilized species that was completely high in fiber, showing people were not on the paleo diet and they were on frugivorous diets. Now, would you take that as absolute evidence as we should be eating nothing but fruit? You probably wouldn't. The same way that I'm going to not take your meat grew brains thing as absolute proof, and I'm going to need to see more evidence than that.
And I have provided you the evidence, and I will continue to provide you the evidence. I have people that I speak to that have been able to link the stuff because they are actual scientists that I have been speaking with.
Okay, so, I mean, you didn't really answer my chicken eggs thing. Like, do you think people have been eating chicken eggs forever just based off, like, do you think people just followed around chickens and, you know, had pet chickens that they lay eggs once a month and they're just waiting for their one egg to come out?
I'm the first person that joked that, you know, I want to meet the first person who followed a chicken around till it laid an egg and said, I'm going to eat the first thing that comes out of its ass. I'm the first person to make that joke. Okay. So just like, you know, who in the world waited for a cow to have a calf and go, I'm going to drink whatever comes out of those teats. You know, there are some things that I don't, you know, there are some things that I consider, you know, I look at and go, okay, how did you come up with this? Okay.
Yeah.
But it does have nutrients, but it is high in cholesterol. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Anything with cholesterol is a double-edged sword. Okay. There are bodies out there that process heme iron at a higher rate than non-heme iron, and vice versa. And there are bodies out there. No, I'm not getting angry. I'm actually getting shaky because my blood sugar's dropping. I haven't eaten today. I've been busy doing things, which is not good. Where was I? Heme and non-heme iron. And then there are bodies that can process both equally. Okay. On average, yeah, I'm passionate. On average, and it is hard to nailed down a small average in between heme and non-heme iron as far as absorption is concerned due to different body requirements for these nutrients. Because let's face it, all this aside, the one thing that we can agree on is the recommended daily allowance is the minimum required allowances for vitamins and minerals and amino acids that has been set by health standards.
I mean, that's an appeal to authority, first of all, just to say that these people arbitrarily picked some number, and then therefore, if you don't get this number, then you're unhealthy. You're talking about the Heart Association earlier. Like, the Heart Association isn't any sort of authority. The president of the Heart Association just suffered a heart attack, so that goes to show you how good that place is at dealing with heart disease.
Where do you think these associations get their information from? Double-blind studies, biological studies, and other scientific studies to back up these facts. Where do you think nutritionists get information from for balanced diets? Okay.
So let me just appeal to authority just like you're doing. So the World Health Organization says an adequate amount of protein is 4.8% of your diet. So if you eat any piece of meat, that shoots it way higher than 4.8%. So therefore, nobody should ever eat meat.
Okay, now you're twisting my words.
I just appeal to authority, though.
There's a difference between minimum recommended. There's a difference between minimum recommended and maximum amounts. RDA is minimum.
No, I didn't say RDA. I said adequate amount. So for you to be a healthy person and have a positive nitrogen balance from your protein, all you need is 4.8%. Any more to your body is harmful. So fruit on average is about 5%. So what does that tell you right there? That's perfect.
Well, anything that kind of makes my eye twitch, I go a little bit deeper and I either ask for or look for citations.
Okay, well, you could just look it up. World Health Organization, 4.8% protein recommendation. Mm-hmm. But I mean, anybody could just appeal to authority and say, well, this dietitian told me milk was good. Oh, and then I look into it. Oh, turns out the dairy farmers of Canada sponsor the dietitians of Canada. Isn't that interesting? I mean, that means nothing.
There's always going to be skewed studies. I think I had already talked about that with your friend. The whole thing is these things need to be independently done, peer-reviewed, and double-blind. These things do not need to be sponsored by any sort of organizations. And in order to find these studies, we have to dig deeper and we have to go behind how these studies are conducted and who these studies are conducted by.
Yeah, exactly. So 70% of all studies are funded by industry, just like the egg ones that I was talking about. So I guarantee if you find any study that says cholesterol is good for you, it's going to be funded either by meat, dairy, or eggs. It's going to be very hard for you to find, some type of Harvard study that's legit or something like that that's going to say cholesterol is great for you. Nobody's going to say that.
No, nobody's going to say that. And the key word there, Race, is processed meats. Because there are people that live on farms that free range and eat their own meats and raise their own meats the way they want them raised. And Dylan, the reason that I don't look 100% healthy is for the past year and a half, I have been living under the poverty line and have been eating the worst foods imaginable because I could not afford to eat a balanced diet.
Let's get away from the comments here. Get away from the comments here for a second. They're distracting. But so you just mentioned processed meats. So I'll just say a couple more things and then we'll wrap this up. So you just mentioned processed meats are the only thing bad for you. So if you look at the World Health Organization, it's not just a bunch of jokers. It's not just like they're picking, just random industry funded studies and they're all skewed. So what they do, they have 22 experts from all over the world, right? And they're meat eaters. They're not vegans, from all over the world. And they come to one place and they review thousands of studies. So they've reviewed over 1,000 studies to show, like legit studies, the ones you were talking about, that show processed meats is a type 1 carcinogen and directly linked to cancer. But there's also type 2 carcinogens. And I believe poultry, what you're talking about, chicken, that's a type 1 carcinogen, if I'm not mistaken. But then there's also beef, pork, all these other things are either type 1 or type 2 carcinogens, and they're all linked to cancer. And this is from experts reviewing thousands of studies.
And because all the meat is mass produced, you're pumping these things with all sorts of chemicals. They're being exposed to sprays. They have natural, they have natural cholesterol in them. And there are other constituents in those meats that are possibly carcinogenic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I say possibly.
Well, you just said natural cholesterol. So natural cholesterol isn't processed. And first of all, I said processed meats is one category, but then I also said poultry, beef, pork, there's lamb, there's a whole bunch of them, and they're not processed and they're linked to cancer.
I would need to see those studies and delve a little bit deeper. I am not saying you are right or wrong.
It's not a specific study. It's not a specific study. If you just
I said studies.
Yeah. So I mean, you would be reviewing 1,000 studies. So I mean, you could do that if you want to, but yeah.
That's why that's why people make it their career. Yeah, I mean, everything, depending on where your plants are grown, they could do more harm than good. Because let's face it, if you grow your plants on toxic soil, what goes into this plant will inevitably toxic. If you take an organically grown plant and you highly process it to the point where you can't recognize it anymore, it's more harmful to you than good.
Okay, so we got to look at what does the most harm. What does the most harm, though? So the leading cause of death is heart disease. What are the two things that cause heart disease? Cholesterol and saturated fats. By cutting out cholesterol and saturated fats out of your diet, you eliminate the leading cause of death. So therefore, a whole foods plant-based diet should be the staple diet for everybody.
It should be a whole foods, non-highly processed diet. In other words, the closest you can get to whole foods. Okay, that also means for people that want to go the full yard and also eat meat, raise their own livestock and do it themselves and learn what a balanced diet is. Don't eat proportions that are bigger than you're supposed to be eating. Don't lead a sedentary lifestyle. Cut out all highly processed foods like chips, fried foods, fast foods, and so forth. The problem is most of the population doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of a straw man though, because you're almost claiming that I'm encouraging those things. I would not tell anybody to have any sort of processed foods, genetically modified, weird things, like I would say, have a whole foods plant-based diet, as much organic as possible as you can afford, and you're going to be healthy, right? I wouldn't say have any of these junk foods or anything.
I didn't say you were recommending those. I didn't say you were recommending those.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so what we can, let's just kind of close this up here. What we've agreed on so far is that, from what I've heard from you, is that people should only be having meat once or twice a month. That's it.
Red meat such as beef or pork. Red meat such as beef or pork.
Okay, so do you eat meat once or twice a month?
I eat red meat at least once a month. I eat chicken and fish every time I can get my hands on it.
Okay, so what I stated earlier is, like, if anybody actually wants to see evidence afterwards, I could show you a study that shows eating meat once a week almost doubles your risk of disease. So it is best to avoid it, period. But I don't know what evidence that you have that that moderation somehow is beneficial, but I don't think it is whatsoever. And I think still a whole foods plant-based diet is optimal, and not only optimal for health, but optimal for ethics and optimal for your carbon footprint.
Is that meat diet just a meat diet? Because there are herbs, vegetables, and stuff like that that can boost your immune system, that can lower your risk for disease if you have it with that meat.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, you'd have to prove that. But yeah, we'll pass it over to Conscious Omnivore over here, and he could say his closing statements.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys. I think I would just kind of sum up my view on it in the following manner. We started off talking about deficiencies, and I think we're in agreement that it is possible to get all your nutrients and not be deficient on a properly planned, vegan diet. I think that's the key word, is properly. Just like you can be extremely unhealthy eating an omnivorous diet, you can be extremely unhealthy eating a poorly planned, vegan diet. But you can be really healthy, and in fact, all the studies seem to show that you can be healthier eating a properly planned whole food vegan diet. And I would just close with this. Like Logan said, heart disease is the #1 killer of people worldwide. It kills close to 9 million people every year. We don't see people dying of zinc deficiency and calcium deficiency and what have you. We see people dying of heart disease. The thing that directly, causes it is the too high level of cholesterol level in your blood, and that's directly driven up by any consumption. So literally any, not moderated or whatever, it's any added saturated fat or cholesterol you're consuming directly contributes to that. So if you can avoid that, and you get the additional benefits like saving the animals' lives, saving the environment, saving yourself money. One thing that we didn't really get a chance to talk about is that there are studies that show vegan diets are actually cheaper too. So the average person in the U.S. Can save close to $1,000. I think I'll put a link in the description after the video is posted, where they show that I think it's like over $1,000 a year that you can save by eating vegan versus non-vegan. Many things are actually really cheap, like rice and beans and things like that, unprocessed whole foods. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody else wants like a closing statement. Maddie,
well, I will say there were some things that I took away that I learned from this. Okay. Where I'm always looking for opportunities to learn. I still contend that there are some people out there that do better on an omnivorous diet. So I believe that I will agree to disagree on certain points. I usually do recommend people to have more fruits, vegetables, and nuts and meats in their diet, and that a balanced diet, no matter which diet you choose, is very important for optimal health.
Cool. Logan, do you want to wrap up with a sentence or two?
Okay. Yeah, 2 things I'd just like to mention. Vegans on average are the only people in the healthy BMI range. So no other diet is even in like where a healthy body weight should be. I mean, that's very telling right there. There's a study that shows vegans on average live longer, and vegans on average have a better quality of life and are healthier. And people will claim, oh, it's because of lifestyle. But then they've actually done a study that shows that sedentary vegans who sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing have better arterial health than meat-eating marathon runners. So it has absolutely nothing to do with lifestyle and everything to do with diet. Just where this debate came from was I was going to make a reply video to this video from Traname. And if nobody's seen this video, she starts off the video by saying that it's just an entirely anecdotal story. And first of all, she strawmans all vegans by saying that they say meat eaters should die or something crazy. But then goes on to saying that all these problems happen to her because of veganism. Now, I mean, anybody can just turn on a video camera and make a claim that all these things happen to them because of anything. Nobody could actually see what she was eating, how much she was eating, or she could just be making the thing up. So first of all, anecdotal claims mean absolutely nothing. And then the second part of the video was Maddie's part, where she talks about that vegans are deficient in all of these things. and has a big list. And for any of that to be true, you'd have to prove that vegans on average are more deficient than meat eaters. And you can't do any of that because it's not true. And some of the claims were just absolutely absurd to me, which is why I wanted to have this debate, because protein was on the list and not a single person has ever died of a protein deficiency throughout history. And the second absurd thing was creatine. Now, your body produces all the creatine that it needs. Even if you added creatine to your body will just stop producing it and it'll go back right down to the same level that it was at to begin with. So there's no such thing as creatine deficiencies either. So to me, I was like, what? That's why I wanted to have this debate, because like it was just absurd claims. And then all the claims in this debate so far, I basically have no evidence behind them besides reading a Meat Grew Brains article. So any claim without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
I gave you the evidence, and I have plenty more.
Okay, I haven't seen any evidence, but okay.
It's in the side chat.
Okay, I mean, I'll look at it after. There's 1,000 things in the chat here. I can't just scroll through all this. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll look at it after. We're going to actually probably go to Liam Anthony's or somebody else's stream after this, and people will just be hanging out and chatting. So maybe I'll go over it there, see what I could read, and I'll talk about it over there if anybody's interested.
All right, cool. I think we can wrap there. And what I'll do is I'll put in the links that were in the side chat in the description or in a comment so people can check it as well. Because I'm not sure if this group chat is visible to everyone else who's just in the regular chat. I don't know how it works. So anyway, I'll put it in there. Thanks a lot to both of you for your time. I hope everybody watching had a good time and enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming by. Mm-hmm. Make sure to subscribe to everybody's channel. Peace out.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.